Right now, somewhere in the world, someone just spent $200 on a jersey with another person's name on it. Someone else is screaming at a screen because a ball didn't go into a net. And millions of people are building their entire weekend around watching strangers compete in games that have zero impact on their actual lives. But you just don't get it. And here's what's wild. Neuroscience suggests your brain might be fundamentally different from theirs. What I'm about to share will make you see yourself and every sports fanatic you know in a completely new light. Let's get something straight right now. Your lack of interest in sports doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're antisocial. And it definitely doesn't mean you lack the ability to feel passion or excitement. What it does mean is that your brain processes reward, connection, and meaning in ways that are measurably different from the average sports enthusiast. And the science behind this is absolutely fascinating. Think about this for a second. Why are so many people absolutely obsessed with sports? Like, genuinely obsessed to the point where a loss can ruin their entire week? The answer goes back thousands of years. Human beings evolved as tribal animals. Your survival literally depended on being part of a group. Your tribe hunted with you, protected you from danger, shared resources when times got tough. Being part of the group meant living. Being cast out meant death. Fast forward to today, and that tribal wiring is still there. Sports teams are essentially modern tribes, complete with colors, symbols, chants, and enemies. When someone roots for their team, their brain releases oxytocin, the exact same bonding hormone that creates attachment between mothers and babies, between romantic partners, between best friends. Their brain is literally creating a chemical bond with people they've never met and never will meet. It's wild when you think about it. Professional athletes making millions of dollars become family in the minds of fans. But here's where you're different. People who don't obsess over sports typically have what researchers call reduced tribal identification. Your sense of self isn't as dependent on group membership. You're more comfortable with individualistic thinking. You don't need to be part of something bigger to feel like you matter. And there's legitimate research backing this up. A study from 2019 showed that individuals with minimal sports interest displayed significantly less in-group versus out-group bias. Translation: you don't automatically dislike people just because they support a different team or hold different preferences. Your brain doesn't default to that us versus them mentality. Now here's where things get really interesting. Because what happens neurologically in a sports fan's brain during a game is borderline concerning. You know that rush you get right before something exciting happens. That anticipation, that's your brain flooding with dopamine. Sports fans get that exact chemical hit constantly during games. Every play, every possession, every moment of uncertainty. It's an endless stream of anticipation and reward cycles. And the crazy part? It's genuinely addictive. Neuroscientists have done fMRI studies on sports fans while they watch their teams play. The brain regions that light up are the same ones activated by gambling, by certain substances, by any highly stimulating activity. The nucleus accumbens, the ventral striatum, all the classic reward circuitry firing on all cylinders. And what makes it so powerful is the uncertainty. You have no idea if your team will win or lose. That unpredictability creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, which is the most addictive reward pattern ever discovered. It's the same principle casinos use with slot machines. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you never know which it'll be, so you keep playing. Your brain on sports fandom is remarkably similar to your brain on other behavioral addictions. The neural pathways don't really distinguish between different sources of dopamine. They just want more of it. But if you don't care about sports, your dopamine system simply isn't activated by watching other people compete. And this might not even be your choice. Research from the University of Chicago has identified genetic variations in dopamine receptor genes that can actually predict how interested someone will be in spectator competition. Read that again. Your complete indifference to whether the Yankees win or the Patriots lose might literally be coded into your DNA. You're not choosing to be uninterested. Your brain is wired that way. There's another psychological phenomenon that explains a lot about sports culture. It's called burgeoning, which stands for basking in reflected glory. Watch how sports fans talk. When their team wins, they say, "We won, we're going to the championship." But when their team loses, suddenly it becomes, "They played terribly, they choked." Notice the pronoun shift? They psychologically distance themselves from failure but claim ownership of success. It's a self-esteem protection mechanism. People who don't obsess over sports are far less likely to engage in this kind of psychological distancing. Your self-concept is more stable and consistent. You don't need borrowed victories to feel good about yourself. Your sense of worth isn't riding on the performance of people who don't know you exist. Your self-esteem comes from things you actually control, your own efforts, your own relationships, your own achievements. And psychologically speaking, that's actually healthier. Before anyone gets defensive, I'm not saying one approach is superior, but there are real, measurable psychological differences, and understanding them helps explain why you and your sports-loving friends sometimes feel like you're speaking different languages. Here's something that might seem contradictory at first. Studies show that sports fans often score higher on certain measures of empathy. They practice feeling deeply invested in other people's struggles and triumphs, even when those people are complete strangers. So why don't you feel that same empathy for athletes? It comes down to something psychologists call empathy allocation. Every human being has a finite capacity for deep emotional investment. You can't care intensely about everything, or you'd burn out in a week. Sports fans allocate a significant portion of their empathy to their teams and players, but you're directing that same emotional energy somewhere else entirely. Maybe it's social justice causes, maybe it's your personal relationships, maybe it's creative endeavors or intellectual pursuits or environmental issues. A 2021 study found that people with low sports interest scored significantly higher in personality traits like openness to experience, aesthetic appreciation, and intellectual curiosity. You're getting your emotional fulfillment from completely different sources. Art galleries instead of stadiums, philosophy discussions instead of game analysis, nature hikes instead of tailgate parties. Your brain is still seeking meaning, connection, and transcendence. You're just finding it through different channels. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different paths to the same human needs. Let's be honest about something else that often goes unsaid. For some people, not caring about sports isn't just a preference, it's a reaction. Maybe you were the kid who got picked last in gym class. Maybe you felt excluded or mocked by sports culture. Maybe you witnessed the toxic side of competitive fandom, the aggression, the violence, the ugly tribalism. Maybe you just never understood why grown adults scream obscenities at television screens over a game. Your indifference might have a backstory rooted in negative experiences, or maybe you just genuinely find it boring and there's no deeper reason. Both are completely valid. But here's the part that explains so much about why sports fans and non-sports people sometimes can't understand each other at all. It comes down to how you each find meaning in the world. Sports fans find profound meaning in narrative, the underdog story, the dynasty, the rivalry that spans decades, the last-second comeback. It's compelling to them because it's genuinely unpredictable. Real human drama with real emotions and real consequences for the people involved. You, on the other hand, often find that randomness meaningless. You think, why would I emotionally invest in an outcome I cannot influence, performed by people I'll never meet, in a competition that changes nothing about my actual life? And you're not wrong, but sports fans aren't wrong either. These are just two completely different approaches to the fundamental human need for narrative and meaning. One person finds epic storytelling in a championship run. Another finds it in a novel, a film, a symphony, a scientific breakthrough, a personal relationship. Here's what researchers describe as parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans build one-way emotional relationships with teams and players. They invest feelings without receiving anything back personally. You tend to prefer investing your emotional energy where there's actual reciprocity, where your investment matters, where you're a participant in the story, not just an observer, where your actions can change outcomes. Neither strategy is superior. They're just different ways of navigating what it means to be human. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who extensively studied flow states, those moments when you're completely absorbed and time disappears, found that these optimal experiences can happen through virtually any activity. For some people, it's watching sports. For you, it's literally anything else. Reading, creating, problem solving, connecting with others in meaningful ways. And here's something really interesting that doesn't get discussed enough. People who don't obsess over sports frequently report feeling more present in their own lives. They're not spending 15 hours a week experiencing someone else's victories and defeats. They're actively engaged in their own challenges and triumphs. Think about that. While others are living vicariously through athletes, you're actually living your own life. There's something quietly radical about choosing direct experience over passive spectatorship. This also affects how you spend your time and resources. The average dedicated sports fan spends hundreds or thousands of dollars per year on tickets, merchandise, streaming subscriptions, and game day expenses. They spend countless hours watching games, reading analysis, debating outcomes. You're investing that same time and money into things that directly enrich your life. Learning new skills, building relationships, traveling, creating things, pursuing personal goals. Again, neither choice is inherently better, but they lead to fundamentally different life experiences. There's also a social component that's worth examining. Sports create instant common ground between strangers. Two people who've never met can bond immediately over their shared team loyalty. It's a social lubricant, a conversation starter, a way to belong. But if you don't care about sports, you've had to develop different social skills. You've learned to connect with people through deeper questions, shared ideas, genuine curiosity about their lives. You've probably become better at real conversation because you can't fall back on sports talk as a default. So what does all of this actually mean for you? If you don't obsess over sports, you're not missing some essential human experience. You're not defective. You're not boring. Your brain's reward pathways, your tribal instincts, your empathy allocation, your meaning-making processes, they're all calibrated differently. And that's not just okay. It's perfectly natural. You're part of a significant population that simply finds fulfillment through different channels. The next time someone asks if you caught the game and you genuinely couldn't care less, remember this: you're not broken. You're not missing out. You're simply playing an entirely different game. One where you're the main character, not the spectator. One where your wins and losses are actually yours. One that might, just maybe, have more authentic stakes. If this resonated with you, hit that like button if this changed how you see yourself. Subscribe so you don't miss content made for people who think differently, and click on the next video to discover more about your unique psychological wiring. Thanks for watching, and remember, different doesn't mean deficient. It just means you're walking your own path.